Let me introduce you to our artist. Edward Henry Weston, born March 24th, 1886 and passing January 1st, 1958, was a prominent American photographer recognized as a key figure in 20th century photography. Over his 40-year career, he explored landscapes, still lifes, nudes, portraits, and playful paradise, showcasing a distinctively American, particularly Californian style that highlighted the people and landscapes of the American West. In 1937, he became the first photographer to receive a Guggenheim Fellowship, creating nearly 1,400 negatives with his 8x10 view camera in 2 years. Weston began his photography journey in the early 1900s, initially studying art at the Chicago Art Institute. He bought a camera in 1902, quickly developing a passion for the craft and experimenting with various techniques. His early work was influenced by pictorialism, focusing on soft focus imagery, but he soon adopted a modernist approach emphasizing sharp focus. In the article from the International Center of Photography, it said, Weston subsequently abandoned his pictorialist style and concentrated on precise study of such forms as fruits, vegetables, shells, and rocks. After moving to California in 1906, the region's landscapes and culture significantly inspired his photography, helping him capture the beauty of everyday subject.
Now I'm going to be talking about notable historic and personal events that affected Edward Weston's work. Weston worked exclusively as a photographer, and he knew he wanted to be a photographer from an early age. There were a few major life events that affected his work. One was his move to California. Upon visiting his sister there, he fell in love with the wide terrain and decided to move there himself at the age of 20. Unlike many photographers of his time, he stayed on the West Coast for most of his life and shot many of his famous photographs there. The second was his trip to Mexico. In the 1920s, after its revolution, Mexico was an exciting place for artists. Weston went on a trip there with his lover and fellow photographer Tina Modotti and ended up staying for 3 years. In Mexico, his photography was influenced by the country's strong light, hard edges, and sharp contrasts. The third event was the founding of the F-64 group. In 1932, Weston and some other California-based photographers founded a collective called Group F-64. Their style focused on sharply detailed imagery. Weston explained this movement by saying, the camera should be used for a recording of life, for rendering the very substance and quintessence of the thing itself. Lastly, Edward Weston's photography was not influenced by many historical events, even though there was a lot happening at the time. He took on a disengagement from social and political factors in his work. He believed that an artist should stay away from chaotic current events and instead focus on the long-lasting qualities of nature that to him surpassed the ordinary. The following is a quote referring to Edward Weston and Ansel Adams. Embracing aesthetics and shunning politics, they hope to avoid the pressing social issues of the moment and make nature's enduring beauty the focus of their personal and professional lives.
Alright, so let's talk about Edward Weston's most prominent photos. And the first one is Pepper from 1930. And this photo, he was exploring the lighting on the subject, and he found a very good way to diffuse the lighting on the pepper through the use of the tin foil funnel that he rolled up to diffuse the light through it. And in this photo, he was trying to highlight the curves of the bell pepper. And the second photo would be the cabbage from 1931. This is a good example of Edward Weston's exploration of the straight photography, where in this writing, he's aimed to record the quintessence of the object or the element before his lens rather than an interpretation, a superficial phase, or a passing mood. In other words, he was trying to capture the pure essence of the object rather than trying to expand upon it or adding filters on it. And to quote from Lance Durfat, the work of Edward Weston provides an ideal testing ground for a hand the viewer might have in transforming the photograph, or how photography may evidence the possibility of rhetorical expansion even as it maintains the compact brevity of haiku. What this quote means is, even if the photo is very simplistic like many of his straight photographies, the viewers always find a way to interpret it beyond what the photograph and the photographer just intended to be.
So about his technique in materials, he has a preference for soft focus lens. He interested in creating image with softer, more diffuse effect, and using the very real and the variable. He has a quote saying, "Sharper and sharper, I stopped down my lens. The limit of thy diaphragm F-32 was not enough, so I cut a smaller hole from black paper. He was referring to the characteristic of the radio as well as the fact that graphite field is given with small lens openings, and he was known for his sharp focus details and contrasting light and shadows. He often used dramatic lighting to create strong contrast between light and shadow, emphasizing the forms and textures of his subjects. And he liked to emphasis on natural forms. He interested in capturing the beauty and complexity of natural forms, such as cell, vegetable, and landscape. His work often features composition with limited number of elements, allowing viewers to focus on essential qualities of the subject. And the film he used are the panchromatic films, which is relatively new at the time and capable of recording all visible wavelengths, allow him to capture a wider range of tones and colors in photographs. And platinum paper, he preferred this paper for the soft, rich effect. Thank you.
Now that we have dived into his works, it comes as no surprise that his work is seen as important by scholars, artists, and historians. First being is that he is credited in spearheading the F-64 movement along with its founders. Like mentioned earlier, this group was highly influential in establishing the principles of straight photography. Weston's works was a key in this movement's aesthetic and the philosophical direction. This group influenced photographers including Dorothea Lange and Walker Evans, who documented the effects of the Great Depression across the United States. Weston was a technical master in photography. His photographs are renowned for their shapes, sharpness, texture, tonal range, and the way they highlight the form through the use of lighting. His technical innovations and meticulous approach set a new standards for photographic excellence. He wasn't just limited to one genre in his skill set. He photographed landscapes, still lifes, nudes, and portraits, and his attention to detail in a subject's composition and crafting such demonstrates his excellence in his ability to compose powerful images. Weston was the first photographer ever to receive the Guggenheim Fellowship Grant, which gave him $2,000. The grant gave him the ability to travel all around California in only 200 days, covering 17,000 miles, producing 1,260 negatives, which is an average of 85 miles and 6.3 negatives a day. Lastly, why I and many scholars believe Edward Weston is important to the photography world is because he was a pioneer of modern photography. Weston's work, personal and F-64 work, raised the bar of excellence for photography. He contributed to the popularization of capturing the realness of a subject without manipulation, the shift from pictorialism to straight photography. Weston's exploration of everyday objects and sights using photographic purism show artists a new way for photographers to capture an essence of a subject without distortion. And as I mentioned earlier, his work and philosophy influenced many other photographies. To quote, Weston's belief in the purity of natural form and the transcendent beauty in the commonplace led him to create some of the most undeniable images in the history of the medium.